Okay, part two for readings for this week, chapter 7 in the Nolan Roller book. So, chapter 6 was all about how to elicit, bring out change talk, and then this is about responding to change talk. And I did pull up more about the solution focused therapy. It's interesting. And I really want you to be thinking of all these things as you talk with clients for Florence Family Support Center, which I'm hoping to continue getting a move on with that. So, issue here, directive, non-directive. Again, there's a little bit of a debate because this isn't Rogerian. There are, say, an agenda, which typically a Rogerian therapist technically should not have an agenda other than helping the client explore issues that they may not be aware of or have feelings, and really just providing reflective listening and unconditional positive regard when that is a pure therapy approach, okay, which you can do, but we're using it here in terms of therapeutic alliance. But really more so here, this is not therapeutic alliance stuff. This is more helping people move through the stages of change is one way to look at it, or to help them increase their motivation and in general, specifically, like at the beginning of chapter 6, increase their confidence and importance, really. So, and the two types of confidence or self-efficacy, I'd like you to be able to use both those terms. And the self-efficacy is all from the Bandura stuff, Albert Bandura. So, anyway, so when is it directive? And he uses the metaphor of, you're going to present a bouquet of flowers to the client, and you're selecting which ones to put in front, which ones not to put in. So, and he makes a point about this being, to some extent, dependent on the context. Okay. The counsel may have no opinion or investment at all, which way the couple decides. I mean, really, ideally, you have to go in with a mindset of not wanting to push the client to make a decision. If you're going to do this MI and have this mindset when you're working with clients, and do the best you can, and then whatever decision they make, that's up to them if you've done your job. Okay. But as they say, there are clearly cases in which there's direction towards a particular change goal, like, I mean, a lot of serious alcoholism people are at lower stages of change. And it's hard not to have some sort of opinion about what needs to change. So chapter 12 discusses that, but we're not going to get into that too much. So just want to make sure you get the basics. All right. So differential responding. Okay. So this client says, I know I really ought to get out of this relationship. Person's using constantly, using drugs. I want to have a life of my own. My kids to have a better environment. But I do love him. It's hard to think about leaving. So, I mean, you're going to do basically reflection about the ambivalence. So on one hand, on the other hand. Okay? So the type of change talk is going to be about whether or not this person kicks this person out or leaves. Right? So anyway, some philosophical issues there. Let's get into some technique-y stuff. So elaborating change talk. So basically, you do your chapter 6 stuff, and the person starts to make change statements. So client says, well, if I stop drinking, I'd like to be healthier. So in what ways would you like to be healthier? What would you do? What would that look like? And that's a little bit of the solution-focused therapy stuff, actually. Um, so if they say, maybe this drinking is just a little bit too much, so what do you mean by too much? What specific things is it, to get them to be more specific, right? So more details, um, get them to talk what things, what ways, and details about what ways. That's the general thing. These are specific questions that you would use. Okay, so it might be kind of tough. So you're thinking it might be too difficult to do. It's probably the better route just to get that addressed. But at some point you might say, so what things? How could you start? Like what would be some things that you think might help? And then, of course, reflecting change talk. So one of the most important considerations for you is how staying together or separating would affect your daughter. And that's the kind of thing that the client's going to say, yeah, it might really affect her in this way, or, I'm not sure it's really good for her. What's some of those ways that it's not so good for her? Or what ways would it be better for her? In this case, which borders on a DSS call. Even though he's not hitting the girl, why would that be I'm going to have you think about this question. Why is this a possible DSS call if he's beating up her mother in front of a 4-year-old? There would be some debate about that, but we talk about the writing reflex. Okay. So, and this is where you get, where you're kind of guiding things a little bit, where you've got a little bit of an agenda, is the way to look at it. They care enough about you to set limits. Again, that client's not going to like that. They're unreasonable. And then you say something that actually gets both sides. Where your parents care a lot about you to have rules, but you feel like they're going way overboard, right? Yeah, and then the client, as you see in these examples and what happens is real life, people start to expand a little more on what they think and feel when you give them a good reflection. And that is almost an essential ingredient of doing Rogerian therapy if you ever end up doing that. So summarizing change talk, and this is the bouquet examples, okay? So, and this is where you'd be a little selective. So you're not just emphasizing as you would in a summary, a straight ORS S summary, when you're getting to know somebody, the why they don't want to change, why they do want to change, or things that get in the way versus what they'd like, and you start to say, emphasize more. So one of the things you'd like to do is make sure your daughter has a chance to get a better education, that she doesn't have any sort of trauma symptoms or anxiety or other issues resulting from seeing this stuff. You'd like her to be happy and healthy kid who does, that's the kind of stuff that you're going to reflect back and summarize more if you're at that point with a client who's kind of either leaning that way or saying they want to go in that direction. Okay, you don't have to do a lot of equally balanced stuff when the client, and I think this is a lot of what sort of that intro stuff was about, is when you've got a client where there's movement towards a goal or now some decision about a goal, those are the kinds of things that you would say. Okay, little tricks, resistance theme. So in the past, you've not been able to imagine facing that person. You don't say in the past. So you haven't been able to imagine yourself facing the person and saying, you got to go. So anything involving like can't do it, low confidence, it's always in the past. And this is very much a solution-focused therapy type thing also. So we'll go over it. Rarely do you use but. All right? So if the client says, yeah, well, I think I'm just gonna, leave him a note and I'm gonna go to a hotel that doesn't, or I'm gonna go down to the shelter. All right, sounds like you really spent some time thinking about it and have worked it out in a way that you're gonna feel safe then. Yeah, it took a lot of thinking and consideration, and you got to be careful of saying that's a good idea, because if it doesn't work out, right? So some of this stuff I'm not sure I would do. But you can start to do things. Again, this is later on when the client is clearly moving towards, I need to change, or I think I really need to change, and now what happens? And you're just working on, making sure they feel motivated and confident about their ability to do so, or that it would actually work. You could say things like, I can see I'd be kind of worried about your daughter, you know, or it sounds like a very, very well worked out plan. Right? It's a good point. Careful about that. So, and then just purify. Well, it's important for you to be a good parent. It's more of a values thing, which we'll talk about a little more too. So, technical section, but it's good. It's good stuff. But it's not like tricks. There are themes behind it, the autonomy stuff. So, yeah, see, I don't know. It's kind of weird he brings up this. It doesn't really fit in this mode here. So clarifying ambivalence. And this is when a client's a little stuck or not moving towards those goals, or deciding on a goal. So again, I'm not exactly sure why this is in here at this point, because it's been covered before, and he was kind of moving towards and talking about what do you do when you're actually getting people doing change talk. So anyway, so clarifying values. I might go over that example. All right. I don't know why somebody's deciding to cut their lawn 7 o'clock at night when it's still dark. Unbelievable. So, so once the ambivalence is clear, so I mean that's really when you kick in looking for change talk. You do your pros and cons stuff. Maybe you've done it to help with that. And you can explore one way out of it. And sometimes it'll just be enough to do reflective listening, look for change talk, and evoke change talk like chapter 6, expand upon it, and the client's going to start to move and indicate, this really is something that's I'd like to do. But one way to do it is you start to point out in your statements, or you do your reflections and maybe some questions about what's important to the client in terms of goals and values in their life, what he says are central to their life, or who they want to be. And you can even say, like, I used to do this with students a little bit. I did some of this stuff a little bit at the beginning of every course I taught about academic engagement was sort of the issue I was trying to address, and try to talk to students about examining themselves about what's going to get in the way of them engaging in school in a way that's going to be successful. What prevents them from getting A's and A's? Really, what prevents them from getting A's? And part of it too was I would say to them, what kind of person? You say, well, we think about your future. What do you want to do after school? I feel like I brought this up before with you guys, but maybe it was another class. I'd say, what kind of person do you want to be? Nobody ever asks people that. right? But I think this came up before when we were talking about, when you're asking people goals, I'd like to have a house and a boat and, a house in Myrtle Beach, whatever. So, what kind of person they want to be? And that would help with clarifying values too, in terms of what kind of person they want to be. There's questionnaires and forms. There's like a whole values clarification thing, which I don't really like, but it has its purposes. It's questionnaire-y stuff-ish, questionnaire-ish stuff. So where the client want to be in 5 or 10 years. And I used to ask all my classes at the beginning, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, where do you want to be? And what kind of person you want to be. Let's look for the incorporating values thing. So it's important for you to be a good parent. I mean, that would be a common one, actually. So what else? Uses what else? All right. You have a strong faith community here. So this is where I could have said, so your faith and acting in ways that's consistent with your faith, or there's a bunch of ways you could go with that. I want you to think about that. Are important to you, if that's a value for that person, right? Around here, how would people phrase it? It's usually more like a personal relationship with Jesus kind of thing, I think, around here. And that might be something you could explore with somebody. That kind of language is not used in at least Northern Catholic churches where I grew up. Again, what do you want? What do you want? But there's not really values here. So, but starting a new life, more responsibility. You want to feel like you're doing something important for people. That you're living a productive life, and this would be a value for a lot of people. That they're living a productive life where they don't have to rely on a lot of other people. Right? So, I'm going to catch the value statements here. So I feel confused. Well, of course you do. There's not really one clear right answer here. And that's a nice thing to say. I mean, you can say that. That's kind of, anyway. So I just want to make sure I catch so what is most important to you? So this is where the kind of questions you could ask. And if you're interested, we could talk more about this. Like I say, I explicitly ask people like what they would like their life to be like, in 5 years, or if these problems went away, what's important to you? What kind of person do you want to be? I'd like to be a person that gives back to society. I mean, those are values, and if you're getting drunk all the time, well, that interferes with that. So that's a discrepancy thing, right? So I care about Allison. I mean, he loves Allison, her daughter. It's just that she cares about Allison's like healthy growth, right? Healthy development. I want the very best for her, specifically. So, I mean, kind of a blunt way to say, but what is important to you in life, right? In what way? And I say to our clients, I've said, how would you like your life to be? And we had one client just really sort of was difficult to deal with, and like we asked her like what would your life like to be? She had all these like specific wonderful things, how she wanted to enjoy life and everything. It was such a stark contrast between the way she was running things and dealing with us, which was very difficult. And she had all these wonderful things. It was like you also see the real people, something that they're just buried under these layers of, just having to get by, and they're unhappy and miserable and problems and making bad decisions. And sometimes you get to see under that layer, and you see that, these interesting people who want to do things and have a good life. That's a fulfilling life. You want to think about the humanistic stuff, right? But you see how they're prevented, if you want to look at it from a humanistic point of view, from going up the pyramid. But they think about what's at the top of the pyramid. They've thought about it. Some of them, most of them maybe. And certainly I want to encourage some of them to start. So one of the questions I do ask frequently is, you thought about going back to school? And a lot of them have, a lot of them haven't, but then hopefully you've put that, I see that as seeding, with seed, S-E-E-D thing. So, yeah, see, he's trying to, you can see him arguing this whole directive thing, because that was a big criticism of MI, is that you're not really going in there being totally objective. And so a lot of this writing stuff, which doesn't quite always fit in this, especially in this chapter, to me he got a lot of criticism for it really not, he's using all these client-centered methods, but it's not really client-centered in the sense that you do have an agenda. So that's all that he was kind of addressing that. So anyway, it's important that you know those, have some of those phrases in your pocket. And let me pull up. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, I'll send it to you. So solution-focused therapy, I mean, don't ask me to tell you what the basic theory is. It's not going to say, well, it's behavioral, based on the notion that people get reinforced for skills or not reinforced, and a lot of their problems becomes because they've been reinforced for coping in certain ways, or they never learned certain coping that would be more functional as opposed to dysfunctional ways. And behavioral models of depression, about this lack of reinforcement. It's a treatment based on 20 years of theoretical development, empirical research. Okay, it's competency-based model, working from a client's understanding of his or her situation. And this is an article by Trepper, McCollum, DeYoung, Corman, Gingerich, and Franklin. I finally got the other pages to come up. So to me, it's not really easy for them to explain what the basic thinking behind it is, but it's as much a philosophy as a model, right? So people know it by the famous skill sets, the techniques. So it focuses on what's working and what's not working, or rather than the problem. Goal-oriented, identify with the client things they've done that have worked before. You see the client as an expert. That's one thing. So anyway, let me do this because it's got a little bit more. No problem happens all the time. So you're all right. Competency-based model, focus on working on the client's understanding. Focuses on what the client's desired future is. It's not skills building. The model assumes that solution behaviors already exist for clients. They've done stuff before or they're aware of stuff, or they may not be aware of stuff that actually has worked. You don't do really interventions in the sense of giving them skills or helping them work through some issue, whether it's some Freudian anger at your mother thing, or some skills deficit, or conditioned fears related to trauma, or cognitive, irrational cognitions. Okay, so, but there's no real like philosophy of the mind that I'm sure they all have some, all these people who have done this and who created it, but so general ingredients, conversations, 3 main ingredients to the conversations. All right, the conversations are always centered on client concerns, what's important to the client, what their vision of a future is, preferred future, exceptions. In other words, times they could have had the problem but didn't. Strengths, resources. Who do you know that could support you in this? You don't say, oh, here's a number to call. All right. Now, I'm not saying I agree with a lot of this, but a lot of it is extremely helpful. All right. So, like MI, positive, I'm going to just hit on some things here. Collegial stance, you're always looking for previous solutions. When did they not have the problem? All right. Even if the problem came back, what was going on when they did not have the problem? All right. So even if they did not have a previous solution, which can be repeated because you look for what they were doing at the time. Most have recent examples of exceptions is when the problem could have occurred, but it did not. Okay. Questions versus directives. So present and future focused questions. So when they talk about like negative stuff, you always you use language like, so in the past, well, past tense, you did this. And then you start using now-oriented languages. So when you speak to that person again, what are you going to say? And almost like a now emphasis on the language. So stuff to read here. Solution-focused goals. And this is just, a lot of this is just good counseling stuff anyway, is, you don't, and some of this is you don't help clients not do something, you help them do something. So a client wants to stop drinking, well, what do they want to be doing instead? They want to be having fun, going out, have a good time, being healthy, doing things that get the same result, because I have a behavioral interpretation of that, so that the drinking becomes like not necessary. Okay. So we want our son to talk nice to us is better than we would like our child not to swear at us. Good. All right. So the basic wording for the miracle question is, I'm going to ask you a strange question. Pause. Right. After we talk, you'll go back to your work or your home or school and do whatever you do the rest of today. So it'll be time to go to bed. Everybody's house is quiet and you're sleeping in peace. In the middle of the night, a miracle happens, and the problem that prompted you to talk to me today is solved. So when you wake up tomorrow, some other stuff in there, what might be the small change that will make you say to yourself, something must have happened, the problem's gone. All right. So this little transcript is the client can't even conceptualize it at first. Maybe I'd feel a little lighter. I mean, once you get, again, this is all MI change talk. Once you get people to say, well, I'd probably be a little bit more relaxed. When you get them starting to talk that way, they start to act that way. it's almost like, well, now I know what I'm supposed to be doing. Um, anyway, I'll let you read that. Interesting stuff. Scaling questions, and they use this as an example with a couple. Couples counseling is a whole other thing. Um, let's say, so in terms of how you'd like things to be, you want things to be a 10. Well, husband says, well, that's unrealistic. Yeah, so that's ideal. What would you be good with? They both kind of agree like it'd be an 8. So I think one thing, and I don't remember, I haven't read this all through, if they say, well, what would an 8 look like? Well, maybe we fight once every 6 months, or we disagree, but we talk about it later on. We have a little fight. We don't fight quite as badly or as much, and we always make up at night. Before we go to bed, we make up. Um, so they call that scaling. You get people to kind of use numbers. So where were you this week? The wife apparently says we were at a 5. I said, wow, in 1 week? We communicated better. How did you communicate better, right? Lots of emphasize. You do that in any therapy anyway, but what exactly happened? What did you do? Um, anyway, so there's a lot of helpful stuff that really fits any model. Okay, coping questions. So how I've even said the clients or students sometimes, students come to me and tell me all these terrible problems they're having, and I'm like, how do you even get through the day? And they're like, well, because they are getting through the day somehow. And that's that kind of like change talky type approach to speaking with clients that you need to develop as like a new language. You need to learn a new language. You just use all the time without even realizing it. All right. So I do some of that stuff, but I don't think there's too many things at all I do that are unique. Whatever I say or teach you, or you think, oh, that's really cool. You know, I got this stuff from other people as they got it from other people. Like, did Bill Miller get his stuff from these people? Did these people get their stuff from Bill Miller? Or really what usually happens is somebody else was doing this stuff and everybody picked up on it. So there's very little new under the sun. Um, so what was better? Even a little bit better. Um, therapist characteristics and requirements. Um, this is one of those things that you probably have to have a certain, like, I wouldn't be comfortable with just with such a lack of a theoretical conceptualization. But I could do it, I guess. The video talk thing, I thought that was from this. So it might be from family therapy, something called video talk, where you get clients to tell you something, and you say, well, I want you to describe it as if it's a video, right? Describe like you're watching a video and describing like a scene in a movie. What happened when you said this to him or her, and this happened, and you woke up and you were doing okay, and then you got depressed. Well, I want you to go through it slow, roll the tape slowly, stuff like that. So anyway, I'll send you this link. You can look up anything on solution focused brief therapy, they like to call it. I mean, this is not like you're not in therapy for a year if you're doing this. I don't know what they consider a standard number of sessions. It might be in here somewhere. I mean, it's kind of amazing where this stuff works. You can always watch videos where you see it working and clients getting better. And I mean, there's no techniques. You're not doing systematic desensitization or walking them through the trauma. You can give them tasks, and I'd have to look at that again to talk about it intelligently. Um, I mean, you should not be in therapy for 6 months. with a solution-focused therapist. All right, this is all brief therapy, which can mean 20 sessions, right? For 20 sessions, how many months is that? 5, but I mean, 20 weeks, that might even be long for these people. It would be long for these people. Anyway, so that's it. You might find that really interesting, and I find it interesting, particularly because there are just some techniques that are very powerful, and I incorporate that into my model. So anyway, hope that was all sensible, and I will talk to you soon. Call me with or email me with any questions, anything else. All right, take care.